This is Right on the Money with Tom Mosley, founder of Mosley Wealth Management.
Our mission at Mosley Wealth Management is to help people make sure they never run out of income the rest of their life and they pay as little as they're legally required to pay in taxes.
Since 1995, Tom Mosley and his team have been creating comprehensive, custom financial plans to help you preserve what you've earned and pursue what you've envisioned.
In retirement, a lot of people have built a great lump sum. We call that your lumber yard. But you need a blueprint to put that lumber yard into a plan that you can build a retirement house to live in.
What's on your mind this week, Southern California? The stock market, taxes, inflation, income, Social Security, how to ease into the life of your dreams? Let's discover conservative financial strategies starting right now. This is your Right on the Money Radio Hour with Tom Mosley.
And a very happy weekend to you. You are listening to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. He is the founder and president of Mosley Wealth Management, and I'm your host, Kristen Oakley. We're so glad you're joining us today. Each week, Tom and I are committed to providing retirement planning solutions for you. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about the treasure of your lost or forgotten 401k, how to unlock your hidden retirement potential. Tom, my friend, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. How are you this week?
Well, I'm just hoping I find an old 401k somewhere through this conversation and through this lesson. Wouldn't it be nice if all of us and everybody listening maybe found one? And, some of the stats really show that they're out there. You just got to look for them.
It's so true. And that's why we're calling it a treasure, because for a lot of folks, it can feel like a lost treasure when they are recovered. So here's the deal. If you want to simplify, organize, and maximize your retirement savings, you are not going to want to miss today's show. And I should point out up front here, we're going to be using the term 401k, but this show is really about whatever kind of workplace retirement account you might have. For you, that could be an old 403b, a 457, a TSP account. So no matter what kind of retirement accounts you've had over your lifetime, this show is for you. And to your point, Tom, really today's show is inspired by the significant growth of forgotten 401k, again, workplace retirement plan accounts out there. And we have some stats for you. This is according to the fintech company Capitalize. Tom, are you ready for this?
I'm ready. Get me with it.
All right. So as of May 2023, there are 29.2 million left behind or forgotten 401k accounts, holding approximately $1.65 trillion in assets. This represents 25% of all 401k plan assets currently invested. And here's the real kicker. The average American worker has 3 to 5 old, dormant, or forgotten retirement accounts floating around out there, with an average balance in these lost accounts of over $56,000. So Tom, the average person has 3 to 5 old accounts with an average balance of over $56,000 in them. That means there's a lot of lost money out there. So my first question for you as we dive into this is, when folks come in to meet with you for the first time, how often do you find that they do have these old or dormant, forgotten retirement accounts floating around?
Well, let me start with me. I grew up in Southeast Georgia, and we always did all our banking at the Vidalia State Bank in Vidalia, Georgia, because that's where my dad grew up. And that's where I was born. And although we lived in Claxton and Baxley and Dublin and Metter and Glenville, and I don't have time to go through all the other places that we lived, all those little towns, okay? Well, I got on and started looking not too long ago, and I found out that little passbook savings where I would take, when I made $2 or $4 for mowing a lawn, and I would take the money that I had made, and it might be $10, it might be $12 when we would go through Vidalia to see my grandparents, and put in that little passbook savings where nothing was automated, Kristen. Everything had to be written in. You went up to the teller, you gave them the money, they wrote in what it was, they gave it to you, and they gave you your little passbook back, and their little initials on it that said that you had put in $14 is what caused it to be there. Well, I found out that Here it was over 50 years later, I had in that account, I had $46 because of the interest that had grown over a period of
Mm.
years in what had been left there when we moved to Florida in 1964.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's what we're talking about. It might be $46, but it
Mhm.
also might be $187,000 like people who've come into our office recently. When somebody comes into our office, we give them a list of things we want them to bring.
Mhm.
And many times, Kristen, that is the first time they've ever thought through all the companies that they've worked for, worked with, worked at, and they go through and we always ask them, with that company, did you have any kind of retirement plan? And
Mhm.
we've not only found 401ks, but the P word, okay, the pensions. We've had
Mhm.
people, and they weren't huge pensions, but they worked somewhere, they had a little pension, and maybe they worked there 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, and they had a pension there that was now gonna pay them $256 a month. There's money out there
Mhm.
in many of those things that you closed out, and then here's another thing, and it's why when people come in, to answer your question directly, when they come in for the first time and they meet with us and we find out they've got an old account because they moved everything out of there, right? Yeah, they
Right.
moved everything out, but right 2 days afterwards, there was some dividend that paid, and so that
Mm.
$4 or $14 or $44 got dumped back into that account. What's it gonna do? It's gonna grow.
Right.
And it proves it proves a pretty good theory that's out there that's proven over and over and over again. Just put the money in the account and let it grow, because the money,
Mhm.
$44 goes into that, and 40 years later it might be $600, the way things grow and the way things mushroom. So getting all of your accounts together, we say, come in, we'll build you a retirement blueprint. Recently we had a person came in, and they in
Mhm.
the conference room, they started talking and said, when you worked at that company in Irvine, didn't they give you a 401k? Well, I think so, Myrtle. I don't know, George. I don't know, Myrtle. They were back and forth. And I said, well,
Right.
you got to call the HR department. Well, they've changed names. It doesn't matter. It's
Mm.
still the same core company. They called and they had $187,000 sitting in a 401k they hadn't looked at in over 30 years.
Wow. And
So,
that's life-changing for folks. I mean,
oh,
any of these amounts, every little bit adds up, but that is a life-changing amount of money.
well, this couple was pretty marginal. In other words, they didn't have all the money in the world to just go, light their
Right.
fireplace with $100 bills, as I joke around with people. But that was pretty marginal. And they really wanted to buy a fifth wheel so that they could travel and camp. They
Mhm.
knew they probably couldn't afford to buy a motorhome. Well, that gave them, even after paying all the taxes, more than enough money to buy the fifth wheel. So, in
Right,
answer
right.
to your question, if there's one of you that has money in a 401k, a retirement plan, a pension, or something like that, that's enough for you to think about it. And statistics show there's a lot more than just one of you out there that have situations like this.
Absolutely. And that's what I wanted to talk about next. We have some statistics here, but why, in your opinion, Tom, is it so common for people to end up with these, multiple retirement accounts? Because I think part of it is we don't have womb to tomb employment anymore, right? Like you used
Right.
to graduate, get a job, that's where you worked for 40 years, and then you'd retired with a gold watch and a pension. But that's not what stats are showing. That's not how people are moving through the workforce anymore.
Yeah, let's go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. For people who were born from 1957 to 64, a lot of you are listening, you were born in 1957 to 64. The average person born 57 to 64 has had over 12 jobs. And
Wow.
before they reach the age of 54,
Yeah, that's
12
a lot.
jobs and 35 working years, basically. Okay.
Mhm.
Because like
Yep.
you said, my grandfather started working with the railroad, worked with the railroad, also farmed and did all of that. That doesn't happen anymore. And you
Mhm.
start a 401k, 403b, for something, retirement plan of some kind. You don't move it into an IRA when you leave, because you've got all kind of other things going on. You got to go buy new clothes, you got to figure out the new route to get there, you got to meet everybody, you got to learn a new skill or a new job. And so you're not thinking about your 401k or your retirement plan. It
Mhm.
just sits there, and it's really important that you not just let it sit there. Look at those Bureau of Labor statistics, 12 jobs, 54 people. Some of you are saying right now to yourself, I don't feel so bad because I
Yeah.
fit in those numbers and I thought I was weird. Come to find out, if you've had one job for 30 or 40 years, you're the weird one.
Right. I know how times have changed, right?
Right.
And so, if that is you, if you're listening, please know you're not alone. We have some other stats here. This is from a 2020 study by Fidelity, which revealed that approximately 30% of people who had left a job had either forgotten about or lost track of their old 401k accounts. And this is the issue: 401k savings don't automatically travel with us as we change jobs. This is why it's so easy for people to lose track of old accounts due to lack of organization or knowledge about their options. So, Tom, I know we need to take a break. When we come back, I'd love for you to walk through what the choices are that folks have when they leave previous places of employment. But what could you say to someone who's raising their hand right now going, yep, you've nailed it. You've just described me and my situation, or it's gotten their wheels turning, wondering, do I have any lost money floating around out there? What would you say to someone listening who's asking themselves that question right now?
Here's what I would say. I would say, why wouldn't you get expert 75 years of experience together? That's what all of our advisors have together. And we all work on every single person that comes in. On Monday morning, we sit down and go over every case we're presenting that week when we're talking to someone, because we don't want any of our advisors to miss anything. So we would sit down, you come in, you bring all of your stuff, we start looking at it, but we probe. We ask you a bunch of questions. Did you have any retirement plans there? Did you have a pension there? What did you have? And we try to get everything out on the table. It's almost like
Mhm.
you're building a house. That's why we call it a blueprint. Okay. And we build a blueprint from what you've collected through the years. But you've got to have just one decision on your part. You've got to call in and decide what time you're going to come in to one of our 5 offices and meet with one of our now 8 advisors. Sit down with us and we'll help build a blueprint and we'll search out those missing retirement accounts.
Yes, you get to go on a treasure hunt with folks, right?
Right, right.
So, again, if this is you, we encourage you to reach out. You don't have to go it alone. The team of Mosley Wealth Management would love to be able to help and serve you, but you've got to pick up the phone and call 888-930-5609 to schedule your complimentary meeting to come in and sit down with one of the all-star advisors from the team and have them help and serve you. Again, that number is 888-930-5609.
You've heard the phrase, you don't know what you don't know, and we believe it's especially true when it comes to retirement planning. There's a lot of information out there, and it can be overwhelming and confusing. Social Security, investment risk, these are just a few of the many areas that a financial advisor can help you navigate. But what else don't you know about retirement planning? Are you aware of all of the tax implications of your investments? Do you know how to optimize your Social Security benefits? What about your long-term care and estate planning needs? We believe that by working with a retirement planning advisor, you can uncover potential blind spots in your financial plan and gain a better understanding of your options. Don't let unknown factors potentially derail your retirement. Take control and work with a financial advisor who can help you work towards planning out a comfortable retirement. Call Tom Mosley and the team at Mosley Wealth Management today to uncover what you may not know about your retirement future and start your complimentary retirement blueprint. Call 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609.
Welcome back, Southern California. You're listening to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley. And today, Tom and I are talking about the treasure of your lost or forgotten 401k or workplace retirement plan account. If you're just joining us, we shared a lot of statistics in the first part of the show about why this is such a common situation that folks are finding themselves in. Again, just a reminder, the average American worker has 3 to 5 old accounts floating around out there with an average balance of over $56,000 in those accounts. And Tom, I think of the couple you shared who recently came in and they got their complimentary retirement blueprint from you and the team, and they discovered they had an old workplace retirement plan account with $187,000 in it. So this happens. You see this regularly with folks.
I know. I got the $44 in my little passbook savings account. They got the 187. That's where we get the $56,000, average. I
Average,
wish I'd have
yeah.
been closer to average.
Right? Well, but what we said, every little bit adds up. And this is why it's so important to gather up these old accounts to really maximize your retirement savings for yourself. We talked about the problem, and a lot of it is there's a lack of organization or just knowledge about what options people have when they leave a previous place of employment. So, since these 401k accounts, and again, we're using the term 401k to encompass whatever type of retirement plan account you might have, since they don't automatically travel with someone when they change jobs, can you walk us through what choices are usually presented when someone transitions from one job to another?
Absolutely. There are four main things you can do with that old retirement account, whatever the numbers are. Okay. Number one, you can leave it right where it is with your former employer. One problem with that is out of sight, out of mind. You're not going
Hmm.
to get the employer's not going to give you the meeting report every year when they have the required meeting where everybody comes in and they talk about the plan. And if they ever change the plan, you might be a little bit one off as far as knowing information. You're on the outside looking into that 401k. And I've heard that from the people who've left money in old 401ks with old employers. And here's
Hmm.
another common mistake, Kristen. Sometimes people say, well, it's done really well over there. I think I'm just going to leave it there. And I always want to
Mm.
ask people, what's the stock market done during that time period where you say it's done really well? If it was 2008, I'll bet you didn't want to leave it there then, because the 401k is going to pretty much do what the market does. And if it was 2000 to 2002 when the market was down 47%, it probably didn't do very well. But if it was 2009 to now, you're probably thinking, wow, it's a six times up. That 401k is great. No, the 401k is not great. It may have fees that are really, really high. It's just that the market rode it. You rode a
Mm.
wave in there. So out of sight, out of mind, leave it with the old employer plan. Number two, you could roll it over into a new 401k with your company if that's permitted by the new employer. And I'll tell you, they're making more and more stringent regulations that people are required now to allow you to move those old 401ks into your current 401k at your new employer. This helps a little bit. The problem
Mhm.
is there's still no real money manager on most 401ks. There's nobody there to give you advice. There's some generic offerings that are usually limited offerings. Sometimes I saw a 401k last week that was run by Fidelity, and
Mhm.
and they had 24 choices. So out of all the thousands of investment choices that are out there, that 401k only had 24 choices within it. I saw one with Empower recently that had 18 choices in it. So those are good companies, don't get me wrong. Yes, it's a trusted, reliable company, but it's very limited in the options if you move it into a new 401k. A
Mhm.
third thing you can do is you can cash it out. You can just withdraw it and cash it out. And there's a problem with that. You're going to have to pay taxes, and if you're under as regular income tax, and if you're under 59 and a half, you're also going to have to pay a penalty for taking it out of a
Yes.
retirement plan of 10%. So
That early 10% withdrawal penalty comes into play, absolutely.
right, right. Now, many people take the option, it's not what's necessarily best for you, of moving it into an individual retirement account. And I'll tell you, there's negative about everything, there's positive about everything. 401ks are somewhat protected, much more protected than an IRA from creditors. So I always tell people, if you're going to be sued or you're going through a lot of things where people could come at your money, you might want to leave it in a 401k or a retirement plan. A company retirement plan, because they are better protected, particularly here in California, than an IRA. But most people do move it into an IRA because they can move it into a plan where they have more options, more bells, more whistles,
Mhm.
more things they can look at. So those are your four main choices. Now, the only one where you're going to pay tax is if you cash it out. Okay.
Mhm.
If you
Mhm.
take the money out in cash, and surprisingly, particularly younger people cash it out. Younger people, please listen to me. Don't cash that out. You've already put it in a tax advantage plan over there where you're not it's going to grow without tax until you begin to take it out. And what's been proven time and time and time again, it's time in the market, not timing the market, that makes all the difference in the growth. And you've already got a head start on all of us old folks because you've started younger. Please try not to cash out those 401ks when you change jobs.
Yes, it can trigger so many negative consequences in other areas of your financial life. But here's the point, you went through those four main choices, Tom, and I want to dive a little more deeply into the problems with what most folks tend to do here in just a second. But it's the choices can be confusing for folks. And I think it's not surprising, especially if you've been maybe forced out of a job. Maybe you were unexpectedly laid off, and that creates all sorts of stress. Or, like you said, you're moving on to a new job by choice and you're excited, and there's all this newness with that. It's easy to see why many Americans just defer the decision and leave that 401k behind just to deal with later. So it's easy to see why this happens. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't behoove the custodian of that account to encourage people to move the money because they're paid based on how much money they're managing. So is that another thing that, I think sometimes companies make this more confusing than it needs to be, right?
Well, you touched on an issue right there, Kristen, that I hear all the time. I'm in a 401k, there are no fees. And
Right.
I always encourage people to look up the real price of the S&P 500, which is in almost every 401k that I've seen. There's some allocation where you can put your money into a S&P 500. It's what it's called, and I want you to understand that that is an S&P 500 account that's regulated to that 401k. It
It's a
is.
fund.
It is.
It's right. Yeah.
It's not the real S&P 500. And here's my challenge to you. Go look at the value of it, the unit value of it. And whereas the S&P 500 may be at around 6,000 right now, that
Hmm.
unit S&P 500 that's in your 401k may be at 454 was the last one I looked at, or 678. It is a separate value. Why do they do that? So that they can take their fees out of that separate S&P 500 account within the 401k. Newsflash, there's no one that's going to take all your money, make you a ton of money, and then give you back 100% of it except your parents, okay?
Mm,
And your parents are usually old and they need the money themselves, or like my parents are gone. They can't do that anymore. Everybody has fees, and that's what people don't realize sometimes when they're getting into the 401ks. They don't see, their risk there. I know it's a question we're moving into, but their risk there. There's problems with having the multiple accounts because what are the
mhm.
different risk levels on the different accounts? What are the different return levels? Because you may have three 401ks. By the way, Kristen, the record is I've got a client still who, when he came to me, had six 401ks.
Wow.
And
That's the record for how many you've dealt with
oh, it
someone?
is. That's the
Yeah.
record. I mean, he
Mhm.
he was employable, but he just couldn't keep a job. Was the way I was joking around with them because
Right.
they were out there, and you've got different risk levels within each of those six 401ks. You've got different return and performance levels. You've got different fees within that, and the government has tried to, in the past 10 years, step in and make the 401ks more transparent about the fees that they're charging. But do not sit back and think that I'm in a 401k and they're not charging any fees. That is absolutely not the case. There are, and I jokingly call them fleas in everything that are out there, and they will just eat away at what
Mhm.
you've got. I mean, it's not the major downturns sometimes that cost people so much money, because the major downturns in the market are generally followed by a bounce back. And
Right.
if you'll just do nothing in that 401k and leave it alone, unless you're within 2 or 3 years of retirement, then it's a lot more crucial because the time factor that you have is not the same as a 25 or a 35-year-old. You don't have time to recover. But if you'll just leave it alone, the downturns in the market usually make up for themselves. At least they always have so far
Yep.
in history. But it's the fleas and the little things that are just constantly eating and the performance. I showed a guy a report recently where he was 1.9% per year underperforming the risk level he was taking. In other words, he should be getting this for the risk he was taking. And he said, well, that's not bad. And I said, no, you're right. Over a 30-year performance, you're just losing about half of what you would have in your 401k.
Wow. Yeah.
That got his attention. That's where
Yep.
you have to trust somebody who's an expert. That's a lot of money. It's more money than most people have ever dealt with in their life. It's the biggest pot of money they have for their retirement, that alone with their house. Get some help, seek out
Yes.
somebody, and we do it. We build blueprints for free.
Yes. And that number to call to claim your complimentary retirement blueprint is 888-930-5609. There's such power in making sure that your money is working hard for you. We want you to unlock your hidden retirement potential. Let this be the day that you don't put it off anymore. Pick up the phone and call 888-930-5609. When we come back, we're going to dive a little more deeply into the risks and problems with trying to maintain multiple old retirement accounts. And of course, we're going to provide the solution to this problem as well. Stay with us.
For your own no-cost retirement blueprint, call Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management, 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609. Which will you spend more money on in retirement? Food or healthcare? Do you take your investments out of the stock market now that you're retired? How do you know if you've saved enough to stay retired? Will your Social Security check be reduced in the future? How do you produce income from your nest egg to fight costs like taxes and inflation? At Mosley Wealth Management, Tom Mosley and the team take the guessing out of retirement planning by devising a written plan that accounts for all of your concerns. The bigger question, are you going to be okay in retirement? Find out the answers to your retirement questions by calling Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management, 888-930-5609. Income, investments, Social Security, Medicare, longevity, health care. We cover these solutions and all of those other questions on your mind to answer, are you going to be okay in retirement? Call Tom Mosley and Mosley Wealth Management for your own complimentary retirement review, 888-930-5609.
Welcome back. You're listening to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. He is the founder and president of Mosley Wealth Management based right here in Southern California, and I'm your host, Kristen Oakley. Today, we are talking about the treasure of your lost or forgotten 401k account or whatever type of workplace retirement plan you may have that you might have left behind at a previous place of employment. And Tom, you did such a good job of touching on some of this, but I really think it's important for us to drill down and help folks understand what's at risk here, what's at stake, because there's multiple risks and problems with having multiple old retirement accounts scattered around across various employers. And you really did a good job of talking about the fees and how it can often make, people not have their money working as hard for them as they could. They might be missing out on higher returns and incur higher than necessary fees. But let's go through some of these other problems in a little more detail. So first up on our list, you touched on this, but limited investment choices. Remind folks why their money can be so limited if they leave it behind.
Yeah, you might only have 14 choices. You might only have 18 choices or 22 choices. There are multiple choices out there. And a large company in the Inland Empire here in Southern California about 2 years ago, it was right after 2022, but it really struck with me because of the numbers. Sometimes when the numbers rhyme, it's easy to remember everything. In this 401k account, large company. If I mention the company, many of you would know this company, okay? This company had 22 choices, and every single one of them, stocks and bonds in 2022, were down at least 22%. I mean, some of them were down 36%, some of them were down 22.1%. But when we when we do, then they say, how do you know that, Tom? Because when this client came over, we do a 401k evaluation. You say, well, I don't think you get paid off the 401k. You're right, we don't. But
Mm-hmm.
it's part of your portfolio. And if you become our client, we want to do an evaluation of your 401k. And we call it 401k coaching. And we do that for absolutely free, just like we do the retirement blueprints when we put those together. And we looked at this 401k and there was no safety. There was no place to go. You say, what do I do? Well, if you're under 59 and a half, you grin and bear it. If you're over 59 and a half and you're working at a place, if you've worked there 5 years, 15 years, 30 years, wherever you've worked, most every 401k right now has what's called an opportunity for you to do, if you're 59 and a half or older, an in-service distribution. That's in service. You're in service to the company still, but you can distribute out of that 401k. You have to do it carefully. You have to make sure the company doesn't close the 401k if you take all of the money out. But the reason the government has started allowing that to happen is people that are 59 and a half are much closer to retirement. You are
Mm-hmm.
much closer to not needing to be in a 401k with limited choices, high fees, and poor performance. And this particular 401k in 2022, every account in there was down 22% or more. What if
Wow.
you were 2 years away from retirement and you had your $1 million, and then all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden along came 2022 and all your money was in your 401k, then you're sitting at about $750,000 rather than $1 million. That's
Yep.
why the government even allows you to do an in-service distribution so that you have more choices, you can control your fees and your investment options.
Yes, it's so important to know what your options are. And again, thank you for explaining that in more detail of why this is a problem to just leave it behind and forget it. Some other problems, you have less access to personal advice. And here's the reality, Tom, your 401k plan provider can only talk about that one account. They're not going to be able to give you advice across your whole financial situation. And that can be really problematic.
It really can. I mean, yeah, okay, that's good. The reason that they've added customer service representatives who many times are not even real advisors, they just know the investments within the 401k for the company they're working for. And so you call up to get advice and it's just like, yeah, I can give you advice on any of these 14 funds or on any of these 22 funds, but that is a very limited spectrum of advice when it comes to the full spectrum of financial advice, of retirement planning, of building a blueprint. So you don't have access to personal advice. It's one reason we'll take that 401k, we'll look at it, we'll evaluate it, and we will give you advice, even though it's not something within our control. It's not something that we make any money off of. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure you don't run out of money in retirement. We're not trying to make all of our retirement money off of you by your working with us. We're trying to make sure that you're okay.
Exactly right. And so, between those limited investment choices, the less access to personal advice, the higher fees, potentially underperforming investments, you just have less control over your hard earned money when you leave it behind. Another problem occurs when you reach required minimum distribution age, that RMD age, which is currently age 73. Why can it be problematic, Tom, if you do have multiple or old accounts that you've forgotten about or left behind?
Well, if you've got 4 IRAs, you can take all of the money out that you are owed when you're 73 years of age for required minimum distributions. You can take every penny of that out of one of those IRAs. But if you've got, like the gentleman who came to me a few years ago with 6 401ks, fortunately, he wasn't to required minimum distribution age, which is now, as you mentioned, age 73. But
Hmm.
if he had been, he would have had to take an individual distribution from every single one of those 401ks.
Yep, that's what the rule states. Unlike IRAs that you can aggregate, it would have to come out of each individual 401k, correct?
Exactly. And here's another thing. If you're the business owner and you own more than 5%, and let's say you're providing a safe harbor Harbor 401k. I've got two business owners I'm working with right now. They're prospects, they're not clients yet. But one of them was totally shocked to find out he's 76 years old. And for 3 years, he hasn't taken any money out of the 401k. You say, well, he's still working. And you, aha, Tom, don't you know that if you're still working, you don't have to take your RMDs out of a 401k even after 73? That's true if you're not the owner. But if you own
Mhm.
more than 5% of that company, bingo, you hit 73, working or not, contributing or not, you've got to start taking RMDs out of those 401ks. You say, I didn't know that. That's the difference in what you don't know can hurt you and working with a
Mhm.
professional who should know those things.
And if you don't take the RMD, again, in addition to the tax that you're going to owe on that money that you should have taken out, the IRS can also hit you with an additional penalty of 25%. So that makes a strong case for why it's so important to gather up all these old accounts prior to reaching age 73 for sure, if you haven't already. Another problem, Tom, is beneficiary designations can easily become out of date. Talk about that.
I got a great story. This was like 15 years ago, and I'm talking to a guy who has passed away and his wife has remarried. Okay, so I can talk about this particular situation, no names ever, okay? But they were sitting in my office. I remember right where it was. It wasn't even in our current office here in Anaheim. It was across the street, up on the 8th floor of the building across the street. And I was
Mhm.
going through his 401k from Edison, and I said, "Who's Barbara?" And his wife looked at him and looked at me and said, "That's his first wife. And we've been
Mhm.
married 29 years. How did you know his first wife was Barbara?" And she was like fit to be tied. And I said,
Mhm.
"Hey, wait, wait, wait. Let me just say, I knew because the beneficiary on his 401k is Barbara." And
Mhm.
she said, "Oh my goodness, you never got that changed in all these years." See, that's what happens when you have even a 401k, if you've worked there all those years and you
Right.
haven't looked at it, you haven't reviewed that. And she was really, really, really hot. And I told her jokingly, but I don't know if she was that joking about it. I said, don't kill him tonight. He's got to go change that beneficiary because the courts will give that to Barbara. They've proven that all the way to the Supreme Court multiple times
Mhm.
that
Yep.
whoever's on that beneficiary document. And here people come in and they have those old accounts, and they've had people who've died. They've brought in
Mhm.
trust to me, and the successor trustees have already passed away. That's why we're nosy.
In a good way,
You know,
because it's so important to know this stuff so that something tragic doesn't happen. Because to your point, if someone were to die unexpectedly and they never change those beneficiary designations after a significant life event, the wrong people could be inheriting your money. That's the problem.
no, that's so true. And then you've got those old accounts, and let's say you get a report, which many times you don't get the reports on them, and you've got those old accounts, and you want to change something in there. Well, how do you change it? You usually have to go through the HR department that's there, and uh, HR people are great. I've got lots of clients who worked in HR departments, but most of them don't even know their own 401k. They don't know their own
Mhm.
healthcare plan. They don't know the rules of coming off of a healthcare plan at 65 and getting on to Medicare. So you have to work through all of those things. And then, you're the alien now because you're not any longer working at that company. You're an outsider, and they feel
Mhm.
like they're busy doing it for all the clients that still work there, let alone you who've already gone 20 years ago to another company. So beneficiary designations, changing the accounts, all of those things are really tough to do if the 401k. And here's one more thing that I'll bring up really quick. Your account could actually just get lost. They
Yep.
they change plan providers, they change the guy's not making any more money off of you who put that plan in place. So they don't have your new address. You need to get an evaluation that pulls together a retirement blueprint, and it starts with, let's probe all of these retirement accounts. That's what we offer to do for you.
Yes, and you don't have to go it alone. We know it can feel overwhelming, but the team of Mosley Wealth Management, this is what they do day in and day out, and they would love to help you navigate successfully through all these things for yourself as well. That number to call is 888-930-5609. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, Tom is going to be sharing the solution to this lost or forgotten 401k account problem. Stay with us to find out what it is.
More Right on the Money with Tom Mosley right after this. Get your own no-cost retirement plan review at 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609. Can you remember how different life was when you were 10 years old and 20 years old and 30 years old? You could be retired for 30 years or more as well. Imagine the different stages you will experience in a long retirement. One of the biggest concerns for most retirees is running out of money in retirement. If you've never planned for decades worth of income spending from your investments, savings, Social Security, and other resources, you don't want to get it wrong. Actively plan for a successful retirement by working together with a financial advisor whose practice designs these retirement income strategies every day in their firm. Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management devises retirement income strategies for listeners just like you, and it's complimentary to get started. Call Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management and ask for your own complimentary retirement income strategy. 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609.
Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley. We're so glad you're joining us today. We've had a very powerful discussion on all the problems with trying to maintain old dormant workplace retirement plan accounts that you may have out there. You know, for you, it could be a 401k, a 403b, a TSP, whatever type of accounts you might have. There are so many problems. We know it's common to have these accounts just left behind, but they could be stuck in high fee plans, involved in low return investments, and that combination can often lead to you foregoing some significant savings for your retirement. So, Tom, it's time for us to talk about the solution to the problem of the lost or forgotten 401k account, which is
Let's consolidate.
yes.
Why do you need all of those accounts? World record 32 IRAs. One lady had one time.
Oh
She
my
wasn't a
gosh.
client. She didn't become a client. She passed away and left 32 IRAs to her sister. And we had to
Wow.
consolidate all of those things. But let's talk about first of all, some of you may be saying, how can I find out if I have any of those accounts? Well, let me give you two places to go. There's a National Registry of Unclaimed Retirement Benefits. That's a good place to go. The Department of Labor has an abandoned plan database, and then there's a website called unclaimed.org, unclaimed.org. Now, there is a company called Capitalize. But I got to tell you, if you go to Capitalize, they're going to try to capitalize on you.
Mm,
They're
mm.
they're a for-profit company
That tries
that
to
will
track down, right? These
right.
accounts. Yeah.
They will help you for a fee. So if you really think you've got something big out there, or if you think somebody's trying to pull the wool over your eyes, I think that's when I would go to Capitalize. And they're probably a great group of people. I've watched a couple of their videos and things like that in preparing for this radio show. But go to that National Registry of Unclaimed Retirement Benefits. We can help you with all of these when you come in. We will make sure if there's any chance of you having any of these type funds, we will make sure that you are aware of these and that you go through these to see if we can find them.
But explain, how does consolidating these accounts help with the growth and performance of one's money?
Well, number one, it simplifies things.
Mhm.
Okay. It just makes it easier. And number two, potentially it could lower your fees. So you're
Yeah.
not paying as much. And remember, like I said, leave the money in the market goes down, the market goes up. Blessed be the name of the market. It will take care of you, at least historically. Everybody get that
Mhm.
last part? It's almost all of the major indices right now are at all-time highs.
Yep.
So even if you were in it at one point and it went down, it's back up. It goes back up. So it's the fees that are within there that you really need to be careful for. Also, consolidation will allow you to, as we've talked about several times, but I just want to say it again, have some alternative investments, but also just some improved investment options rather than the limited amount that they put in those 401ks. It can simplify your required minimum distributions as you approach the age of 73. The bottom line is, just to be said in a very simple way, it can simplify your finances, reduce your fees, give you better control. And studies have shown, Kristen, that those who are actually involved in an actively managed retirement fund tend to have 35% more in their savings. That was a
Mm.
study done by Fidelity in 2023. Now, wait a minute. Fidelity's not just that cop who's always driving you to one of their advisors. Fidelity offers a lot of self-management.
Yep.
But even in we had recently on this show, Vanguard had done a study where self-management left you after 25 years with half as much money as working with an advisor. That was
Mhm.
a Vanguard study. Here's a Fidelity study that says that you'll have 35% more in your savings working with a professional as opposed to going it on your own.
Yeah. And again, there's just so much value to gathering this all together, making sure your hard earned money is working hard for you. And it's so much easier to do it when it is consolidated. And so, I think, Tom, another thing I've heard in my work as a financial educator, sometimes folks have this misconception that consolidating is going to create tax implications for them. So, can you help dispel that myth and help people understand when it's done correctly, why that doesn't come into play?
If it's done correctly and you move it from one retirement account to another, there are no taxable events involved. Let me say it again. If it's done correctly, is it always done correctly? Absolutely not. Do individuals, when they're doing it on their own, make mistakes? Absolutely. Do some advisors, when they're moving money, make mistakes?
Mm,
Absolutely. So you got to be really careful and you got to make sure that it's done the proper way because it could result, and if you're under 59 and a half, it's a double whammy because you could get penalized by having to pay, number one, income tax on everything that moved improperly.
mhm.
Okay. Ed Slott told us recently about a guy who improperly moved something and it cost him $2.1 million worth of additional income one year. Okay.
Wow,
What
wow.
would, what would that do for you?
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't sleep at night because you'd be afraid if you're married that your spouse might kill you. Okay. Because that would really hurt. But it's not just the income tax, but there's a 10% penalty if you do that and you're under the age of 59 and a half. So you got to be really, really careful. And that's why you need professional advice. I mean,
Yeah.
there are a lot of things I can doctor myself, but when I really want to do something serious, I go to the doctor. I've got two doctors. I've got a regular doctor through my health insurance, and I've got a concierge doctor. What I like about him is I can call him, and within about 20 minutes, he'll call me back every single time, no
That's
matter
awesome.
what.
Yep.
I pay extra for that, but
Mhm.
that's why he's a professional and he's available.
Yeah, for sure. So, again, if you complete a direct rollover and it's done correctly and your assets go directly from that employer sponsored plan into a rollover or a traditional IRA, it's called a trustee to trustee transfer. No tax implications you need to worry about, but it could create some huge tax implications if it's not done correctly. So, what steps, Tom, should someone take in order to consolidate their accounts correctly?
Number one, you list all your accounts and you properly identify those accounts. Now, you asked a question earlier about how many people come in with that kind of issue.
Hmm.
Let me tell you, probably 80% of the people that come to our offices don't really know all the nitty gritty detail. Hey, give yourself a break. You're not a financial advisor of the accounts that you have. Are they Roth or regular in that 401k? Is there after tax money in the 401k? In the IRA, is it a regular 401 a regular IRA or is it a Roth IRA? So it's really important. Is there any after-tax money? Do you have a pension? All of those get taxed in different ways, okay?
Mhm.
Uh, if you need information, you're going to need, secondly, in addition to listing all of your accounts, you may need to contact a plan administrator. Kristen, it's not uncommon for me to have people who haven't been given statements in years
Right, and so
on
much
some
stuff
of
is
those,
online now, which is easy to lose track of it, right?
and they assume that everybody got the message at the meeting or in their little pigeonhole box, mailbox at work, and you don't work there anymore. You've
Right.
moved on, okay? The third thing, you've got to decide whether to keep it where it is or roll it over. Oh, well, let me just take a 60-day rollover and let them write me a check, because here's what happens. They make it so hard for you to get the money out and roll it over and transfer it. That's where you need the professional,
Mhm.
that you get frustrated and you say, just send me my money in a check. Well, yes, you can do that, but no, you don't want to do that, because
Mm-mm.
you've just set yourself up in a financial minefield, a tax minefield. So you need to make sure that everything you do, you execute in that transfer from a trustee to trustee transfer in a direct rollover, that you avoid any tax penalties.
Yep. Yep. And again, that's the key. This has to be done correctly. And we can't stress enough the importance of working with the right financial professional to make sure that all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, so you don't run into these financial landmines or inadvertently create horrible tax implications for yourself. Well, Tom, we've covered a lot of ground today. And as we think about wrapping up today's discussion, anything else come to mind of something you really want our viewers to remember when it comes to this important discussion of consolidating old retirement accounts?
You can do it, but it's dangerous. You
Mm,
need help. You need somebody to guide you, not just about taxes, not just about your 401k. We just touched on one thing today.
yeah.
There's a myriad of things about retirement that are hard to understand. And yeah, if you want to dig it out, you can do it. The information is out there, but there's also conflicting information. And there's information that's best for Bob at the water cooler or Sally in the break room, but maybe not best for you. That's what we offer. You come in, you meet with us, come to one of our events, go to our website, Mosley Wealth Management, come to one of our events, learn about taxes, learn about Social Security, learn about the entire retirement masterclass. But come in, sit down, and meet with one of our all-star advisors. We'll build you a blueprint just for you. We'll avoid those pitfalls and those landmines. We want you to have the best retirement possible.
Tom, thank you. And the best part is this is for no cost, no charge, no obligation. It's simply an invitation to have a conversation to see how Tom and the team of Mosley Wealth Management can help and serve you. But you have to pick up the phone and call. That number to call to schedule your complimentary retirement blueprint planning session is 888-930-5609. You will be able to walk away with a plan in your hands. If what we talked about today is resonating with you, if you know you need help consolidating, there's never been a better time for you to pick up the phone and call. Again, that number is 888-930-5609. Thanks so much for joining us. Be safe, be happy, be blessed, and we look forward to being back with you next time here on Right on the Money with Tom Mosley.
Get your retirement right on the money with Tom Mosley. Call 888-930-5609 for your no-cost appointment. 888-930-5609. Investment advisory services offered by duly registered individuals through Mosley Wealth Management Incorporated. Mosley Wealth Management and Mosley Insurance and Financial Services are affiliated companies by common ownership license number OB61811. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refers to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength, claims paying ability of the issuing carrier. This content is intended for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the needs of an individual situation. All hypothetical examples are provided for illustrative purposes only. They do not represent real-life scenarios. Mosley Insurance and Financial Services, nor its agents or representatives, may give tax or legal advice. Individuals should consult with a qualified professional for guidance before making any investment decisions. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any government governmental agency. Some of the information provided may be from one or more third parties, which we believe to be reliable sources, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Mosley Insurance and Financial Services.